In light of yesterday's video, I thought now would be a great time to release this footage here. As you guys can see, we are at Tier 4 here in the Oklahoma. And if you don't know, the Oklahoma was a previous Bureau project, which I think is now available in the store for doubloons, and a pretty decent battleship at the tier. And if you guys have watched me for any amount of time, you know that I typically like to hang out at the higher tiers. I just prefer the ships up there in the gameplay, but like we mentioned in yesterday's video, when the teams are not cooperating, it's always nice to drop down to the lower tiers and do a bit of seal clubbing. Now, I had a viewer ask me in a previous stream what seal clubbing is, and well, that is basically taking your 7th grade self and going on down to 3rd grade there and abusing all of the newer players. Players that don't know how to angle, they rush in aimlessly and don't play the objectives. Actually, come to think of it, yeah, there's not much difference between the lower tiers and the higher tiers. No, but in all seriousness, like we mentioned in yesterday's video, when things aren't particularly going your way, drop down a few tiers. The game tends to slow down. Obviously, as you can see, we are chugging along at 15 knots here. Now, of course, you're not going to get the reload, the accuracy, and all of the different perks and versatility that come at the higher tiers. But learning the basics at these low tiers is going to help you progress if you are struggling at the higher tiers. That and the fact that most of the cruisers at this tier are made out of explodium, so playing a battleship sometimes at these lower tiers is a lot more fun. Now, I want to make a little side note or disclaimer for this video. The reason that we had dropped down here in the Oklahoma is I was actually trying to make a video trying to emphasize that your commander doesn't matter as much as some people think it does, and I was trying to get some footage for that video. We had previously got another game in the Oklahoma where I went out and absolutely dominated another set of new players. So throughout this video, pay attention to the accuracy, the dispersion, the effects of the shells, as right there we get a beautiful citadel through the front of that Douget through on there, the French cruiser. So just keep that in mind when watching this video. But as you can see there, this is why playing battleships at these lower tiers is sometimes so much fun. Pretty much regardless of any angle the cruiser might give, you can punch right through a good majority of their armor. And I'm not sure if you guys were paying attention, but there was an Omaha in this game, and right there he is. And as most of you know, anytime an Omaha is spotted, well, that is a priority target number 1. Well, because the Citadel pretty much takes up half of the ship. That and the Omaha is actually a pretty dangerous ship at the tier, but we catch him off guard right in the middle of his turn, and you couldn't ask for a more beautiful shot. Good night, thanks for playing. And yeah, this is pretty much just an unfair advantage that I have. Possessing the knowledge and power of knowing when to use armor piercing is a skill that a good majority of these players probably do not at the tier. But we are introducing them to the game kind of the tough love way by showing them, you know, kind of what not to do. But speaking of what not to do, getting detected in a destroyer is another bad idea. We take a nice lead shot there, and yeah, there goes about half of the health of the T-22. And I actually saw a comment yesterday in another stream talking about shooting HE in a battleship at destroyers, and that is always a viable option, but in a situation like this when there is a plethora of targets to shoot at, when AP is the much better option, shooting AP at destroyers is still going to do a mass amount of damage. Even though you are only ever going to be getting that 10% when your gun caliber is over 280 millimeters, which of course these are, that 10% you hit 2, 3, 4 shells as you saw, and with how little health destroyers have, you're still going to be chunking them for a huge amount of damage. Which honestly brings me to another point, which is always shoot at destroyers. Always, always, always. The longer a destroyer is allowed to live, the more dangerous he becomes. And what we mean by that is, you know, as a game progresses, you are inevitably going to lose a few ships. When that happens, a destroyer's ability to move in and out of certain positions increases, right? With their detectability, less ships on the map, they are able to roam more freely. So if you can get damage off of them, or in this case, even eliminate them, you are doing your team a huge service. Now, this next piece of advice is mainly for my newer players, and this can apply to pretty much every class. However, it especially applies to battleships because battleships don't have the best maneuverability, and if you blindly push into a situation without really paying attention to who has your broadside, what does the situation call for, well, you're going to be putting your ship in a bad or poor position. And when that happens, you either have to turn broadside to get out of it, or you're going to sit there and succumb to the inevitable HE spam or, onslaught of multiple different ships that are able to shoot you. And here is a pretty good example of it. Now, we do have a good advantage, right? We are up 2 ships and we are working on getting our second cap, 2 out of 3 there. However, if I were to push straight into this, mass of ships here without other battleship support, we wouldn't really be making a plus play. And what, of course, we mean by that, and sometimes in sports you have plus plays and minus plays, good plays and bad plays, right? When the running back picks up a blitzing linebacker, he makes the block, that's a plus play. So rushing into a situation, giving up 50% of your health, all just because you are not paying attention to your surroundings, is a minus play. So if you can string up a bunch of plus plays in a row, combined with some decent teammates or 1 or 2 other teammates who, have a functioning brain cell, then typically you're going to win the game. Now, of course, it's not always going to work like that, just like we talked about in yesterday's video. But again, more plus plays than minus plays, on average, you're going to win and you're going to do well. So positioning, target selection, all, tools that battleship players need to possess in order to be effective in the game. But here we pop our spotter plane, we line up a beautiful broadside shot on that Congo, and you can kind of see that accuracy is increased just a little bit there. So keep that in mind. I've got a good point that I want to make at the end of this video.
Concentrate fire on the enemy warship.
And speaking of positioning, I took this angle out here. As you can see, we have a battleship on the inside of Charlie, and a good majority of our teammates are over there at Alpha and Bravo. So kind of, kiting away in this defensive position here while we can get all guns on target and somewhat angle our armor is one of those plus plays that we were talking about. Far too many battleship players sit bow in and just, while it can be effective in certain situations as we get our high caliber, you're just kind of, you're doing the bare minimum, I guess, of being a battleship, right? If I can get all guns on target while angling my armor, I have doubled, in this case, my damage output, my alpha strike, and I've also increased the ability to attract damage, which is 150% your job in a battleship. Now, this isn't the absolute best example of completely angling, as we are still sort of broadside to that one battleship to the far right there, but we are angled enough to where a good majority of those shells are falling in between the ellipse that those battleships are giving us. And there is where we get absolutely trolled by RNG. I can't tell you how many times I have shot multiple various Danaes and they have all exploded. That was one of the most beautiful shots I have ever seen out of this ship. Completely robbed by RNG, but I guess that's new player protection, right? No, I'm just kidding. That's not a real thing. Sometimes it sure as hell feels like it, but I truly think this game is just a random coded mess sometimes, and sometimes you get on the good end of it, sometimes you get on the bad, because if you're looking at it objectively, I already have 5 Citadels and a high caliber. In this game, there's still so much meat left on the board for me to shoot at. And sometimes as battleship players, I think we forget that this game involves more than one class. And I say this as a previous battleship player. The Iowa used to be my most played ship, 3-4 years ago there. And unfortunately, you're not going to get 9 ships to sail broadside in front of you while you get perfect accuracy every time. A good portion of this game is essentially luck. Your teammates, your spawn, your RNG, right? The accuracy at which you get those shells to leave, the barrels. However, in this situation, you can create your own luck by attracting more damage and, getting angles. You are essentially creating, the opportunity to get more luck. And that is exactly what we have done in this game. And because we have angled and pay attention to our crossfires for a good majority of this game, we can now kind of, have a little bit of fun with our remaining HP. We're going to go ahead and turn back in and try and get ourselves a YouTube-worthy replay here. Something else I want to draw your attention to here, this Iron Duke is essentially trapped on the border with how, sluggish these tier 4s are. So we aim a little bit towards the front there and get slightly trolled with RNG, not able to secure that kill. But you saw us aiming more towards the front, those full penetrations sometimes on the bow of a slightly angled ship. The belt armor or the torpedo protection sometimes will shatter battleship caliber shells depending on, the shell, how big it is, and how much armor is on that belt or casemate. So aiming at a softer portion of the ship, whether it be the bow, stern, or casemate superstructure, is going to be a better strategy to employ in a battleship. And speaking of better strategies, it is not a good one to sail broadside in a dinghy. As we mentioned a few moments ago, creating your own luck by positioning and just getting more opportunities is going to be the way to thrive in this game. We made that turn, we pushed in, we got the angle on the dinghy, and despite missing the previous dev strike on him, we got another chance, and we ended up getting it there. And speaking of other ill-advised strategies, sailing broadside in a New York is definitely one of them, as we only managed to connect one citadel, but a mass of 6 pens, 1 overpen, with the citadel being one of those penetrations sprinkled in there for a massive, massive hit on that New York, taking a good half, if not more, of his health. Now, I tried to get a little bit cheeky here, secondary priority targeting that New York while trying to push into secondary range and also lining up the Congo. Unfortunately, we got that kill, we'll call it stolen from us, and this video is actually from almost a year ago. You can see the date there, so there was no assist ribbon. And a few of you may have noticed it right there, but I actually was running a level 7 commander throughout that entire game. I know I kind of insinuated that we were running a very strong commander. Most of you probably had AL New Jersey in mind. But as you guys can see here, that entire game, 2 dev strikes, high caliber Confederate, 150,000 damage at tier 4, was done with a level 7 commander. Now we of course got a few paid actors who sailed broadside essentially. But the point I was trying to make is, yes, your commander does matter, but not as much as you might think. If we were to, say, run Dewey or a destroyer commander, the outcome may have been slightly different, but putting your ship in the right position, paying attention to the minimap, supporting your team, and knowing the role that your ship requires is far more important than any pay-to-win commander bullshit that the copers like to use as an excuse. Now, there are certainly some commanders that make ships very strong, as you can see here, the AL New Jersey with this particular build. It is, it's definitely better. I'm not going to say that it is the same or worse. However, a lot of people like to get hung up on the small stuff, forgetting the big stuff. And the same thing goes with a lot of areas of, life, right? For example, in fitness and nutrition, people want to know what supplement or, what protein powder, and they don't sleep for 8 hours, they don't get proper nutrition, and they don't train at the gym. Well, none of the small stuff matters if you're not doing the big stuff right. But that's the point we were trying to make in that video. I'm going to make a sort of a follow-up video on this topic, but let me know if you guys enjoyed that one. Do commanders really matter in World of Warships Legends? In some sense, yes. In some sense, no. But that's the topic for today's video. Love you guys. I'll see you later. I'm out. Peace.